Hey there, it's Shauna. I hope you're doing great. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for January 29th. So this week is all about balancing feminine and masculine energy, because this week we have this really balanced energy of both the feminine and the masculine within the astrology. And ideally we'll have opportunities to not just balance these two different pieces of ourselves, but to really feel into the feminine energy and to really feel into the masculine energy that we all have inside of us. So I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you, and then I have 3 tips for you to have an amazing week. So first things first that's happening this week, and that's actually really cool and extra special, is we have a full moon and total lunar eclipse in the sign of Leo. And so this is happening on Wednesday, January 31st. It's exact at 5:27 a.m. Pacific time. And it's exact at 11 degrees of Leo. So what does all of this mean? Okay, number one, it's a full moon. So this is about a sense of culmination. It's emotional culmination. So typically when there's a full moon, our feelings are running higher. We're more aware of the things that we're feeling, whether we like it or not. So the full moon is typically a time where there's more activity and we're just feeling things more intensely as well. When we add in the fact that this is also a lunar eclipse, it really amps up that emotional energy, and it allows for us to shift things a little bit as well. So eclipses are special because they only happen about twice a year. Typically they come in pairs, so we'll have our lunar eclipse this week and then we'll have a solar eclipse in February. So that's the pair for this season, and then we'll have another pair in August, July, August. And so this is our first eclipse of the year. It's a lunar eclipse, so it's more tied to lunar energy, which is feminine energy. And so this is related to how it is that we emotionally process things, how it is that our external world reflects how it is that we feel on the inside because of the way that we process things. And this really interesting tie, how when we change the way that we feel about something, then our external circumstances follow suit. And so this is all in the sign of Leo. Leo is about love, it's about appreciation, and it's about creative self-expression. The main motivator for Leo energy is to feel appreciated for what it is that you bring to the world, and to express in a way that is genuine and authentic, and then to be appreciated for that. So all of these things may be coming up around this time. Leo is also related to feelings of tribe and feelings of acceptance, when we feel accepted versus when we feel rejected. Or it can even be situations where we feel like we need to perform. We feel like we need to fit into a certain box of expectations so that we can be accepted. And so all of these things may be coming up. The fact that it's an eclipse, so an eclipse is when, in this case, the light of the moon gets blocked out momentarily, and then it's light again. So it gets blocked out just for a little second. And so it's kind of like a big reset button around all of these issues that are Leo, that are about love and acceptance and how it is that we express, and can we be accepted and loved and adored when we do bring our full selves, when we bring our heart to the table. Is there a sense of affection and affinity that happens there or not? And then how do we deal with that? How do we appreciate ourselves even when there is an appreciation around us in our world, in our community? So those are all things that may come up around this full moon. And again, it's exact on Wednesday the 31st, but we're in this whole season of eclipses. So this is like an intense point, like a spike in the energy. But the whole next month, we're really feeling this this energy of the eclipses, and eclipses can also signal when something new comes into our life and then something old washes away. And this can be more emotionally based things and thought processes, or it can be literal situations. So I would just really notice, it's always good to notice when we're in this eclipse season like we are now, What is it that is growing and being magnified? What is it that is progressing in your life? And then what is it that's receding? What is it that no matter what you try to do, if you try to keep moving towards something, where is the answer that keeps saying no or let it go? So those are things to think about this entire month, really, but especially this week. The other things that are happening this week is we have Mercury sextile Mars. And so Mercury is our thought process communication, how it is that we verbally and communicate just with thoughts and words. And then Mars is about action. So I'm wondering if there may be an opportunity here where we need to communicate, we need to get something off our chest, and we need to do it in a way that is action oriented, that is almost maybe like kind of forceful in a certain way. And I think depending on your temperament, you're going to know the best way for you to do that. If you're already a person that is very dynamic and forceful with the way that you communicate, maybe you need to dial it back a little bit and just, you know, watch that you don't go overboard. If you're a person that is typically more passive and you hold yourself back from speaking up, this can be a great opportunity to use this to say what it is that you need to say, especially if it's something involving these the Leo issues that we talked about, where feeling accepted, feeling appreciated, you know, how can you speak up when you need to speak up? And lastly, the last thing that's happening this week is we have Venus squared Jupiter. And so this is a really cool and interesting aspect because Venus is about attraction, love, beauty, and sexuality. It's about this polarity of like what we're attracted to and what we're repulsed by. And so like, where is there a draw here? Either a draw towards or a draw away from something. And then it's squaring Jupiter. Jupiter is all about expansion and luck and synchronicity, and where there is growth happening. And so this is an interesting aspect because it's like, okay, this like there's this sense of allure and attraction and what it is that we're drawn to, and there's a growth factor here. So what is it like? There's a little bit of a tension because it's a square. So what is it in our lives that is that we want to grow, and then how do we maintain our social relationships? How do we stay close and connected to what it is that we value, what it is that we're connected to at a very deep level, not a surface level, but things that really excite us, and that the things that turn us on, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. How do we stay connected to all of those things and find a way to make the pieces fit together? So I think it's going to be a really fun, interesting, and dynamic week. I'm excited to hear how you guys are feeling. And that being said, I have 3 tips for you to really make the most of this energy. So tip number 1 is to find your creative side. And I don't mean creative like painting or drawing or music, although, you know, you may do those things if you do go to town. But I want you to find your creative side this week because we're all creative. Leo is associated with creativity. And then I even see like this Venus Jupiter as an opportunity to tap into your creative side as well. And so how are you creating your life? What is it that you're doing to create the things that you want in your life? And I don't mean that in a like in the traditional like vision boarding and manifesting kind of way, but like more the practical day-to-day. Like, what are you actually doing in your life now? What kind of a reality are you creating by the way that you get up in the morning, your routine, the way that you prepare your meals, the food that you're feeding yourself, the lifestyle that you live? What is that creating? Because the lifestyle that you live, this is super important with these eclipses, that has like this chain effect. And so, you know, you do certain practices and then they have a certain effect, and then that has a certain effect on your mood and your physical body, and then the way that you feel and the actions that you take. So I want you to think about your life as like your creative side. What is it that you're doing day to day to tap into what it is that that you want to create versus just letting it happen? So that's tip number 1, to find your creative side. Tip number 2 is to allow creative tension. And what I mean by this is sometimes, especially when we have eclipses, it may feel like things are a little bit unstable, or there's a change that needs to happen, but you're not sure exactly what that looks like. That can happen a lot during this time. And so that maybe you need to make a decision and you're not really sure what the right path is, or there's no decision to be made, but you just feel like there's something that needs to give or shift, and it's like what to do. And I think this is a really, like, that point in time is creative tension, because there's something that needs to happen, but we don't know exactly what it is yet. And so when you feel that way, I encourage you to not make a decision, to not do anything until you feel like a clear yes. And that point, until you feel the clear yes, is creative tension. I was reading, and I'll read a quote for you from Marianne Woodman's book, but there's another piece that I was reading this week, and she was talking about how there's this place, there's this creative tension where when we don't know if we should go towards A or towards B, if we kind of like hold that and don't choose either, that don't feel super clear, then sometimes a third option will present itself. And so I really feel that present with this week, with the eclipse season, where maybe something else will come in and present itself when we allow for that tension to be held. And the tension is so important because that's like what the creative process is, and it allows time and space for a third option to present itself that maybe just needed a little bit of time to catch up. So that's tip number 2, to allow creative tension. And then I have a quote that I want to share with you before I give you tip number 3. So this is from Marianne Woodman's book. It's called Coming Home to Myself. And it might be backwards when you're watching this, but so I love this so much. I love her work. It's very deep and very rich, and very focused on what she calls feminine consciousness, which is really about embracing feminine energy, and not just as like feminine in what we think of it being today as like passive and nurturing, but that feminine energy can actually be very strong and creative and spontaneous and fun and playful and all of these things, and that it's spirit and matter together. So it's like the spiritual side and the physical side as well. So anyways, if we can hold the conflict of opposites, what we want and what destiny has ordained, if we can hold while mind thinks and heart feels, we can learn to think with the heart. In our dreams we dance along a fence, upstairs, downstairs, on sands beside the sea. On dance floors we have known, and on others we have yearned to know. In dreams and in life we dance, holding our balance between the opposites. And so I like this a lot because it just really reminds me of this time of the eclipses and this like holding the tension. And eclipses are a time when it can feel like things that are destined come in. When something happens and it's so synchronistic, or it just feels like meant to be, or there was the right place at the right moment in the right time. And sometimes that takes time for us to realize, like it's only apparent in retrospect. And I think there's like 2 pieces of this. There's like the actions that we take of our own free will, and then there's a certain element of the universe bringing something to our attention, and then we can act on it. And so so that's something to chew on for this week. So tip number 3 along those same lines is to hold your balance this week. And what I mean by that is I want you to really feel into what feels balanced for you, because things are a little bit more unstable during eclipse season. Things are changing on the inside and on the outside. So what is it that you need to feel balanced? Do you need to bring in more of your feminine nature? Do you need to bring in more of your masculine nature? Do you need to focus more on being in your physical body? calming your mind, being more physically active, or maybe doing less. Like, you know, it's going to be different for everyone. And you're going to know, like I know that you know when I'm saying this, what is most appropriate for you. What do you need to balance yourself out this week? Super important. So that's your tip number 3, to hold your balance. So that's your forecast for the week. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with a friend, because I like to get these messages out to as many people as possible. And then if you want to go deeper into this astrology more than I can on this video, you can listen to the Feminine Principle podcast. It's a podcast, a weekly podcast that I co-host with my friend Mel of Energetic Principles. And we talk about all of the astrology for every single week with cool quotes, and Mel pulls some tarot cards, and it's really fun. We get to chat about all of the astrology very in depth. So I'll have a link down below for that. It's Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living, and you can find it on iTunes, Podbean, or even YouTube. And then I have a guided meditation that I've made for you for this full moon and lunar eclipse. So I'll have that. I'll put a link down below for that too, but you can just find that on YouTube. It'll probably be somewhere near this video. And if you would like to know more about an astrology reading, that is something where I'm doing limited, just a few days each month. So if you want to know more about that, you can send me an email. I'll have my email address below. And that's all for now. I'm wishing you an amazing week and sending lots of love. I will talk to you soon. Namaste.